because the president will be there later this morning for address state opening of parliament. It's one of his ceremonial roles them way they do every year. So this is not first address to the sixth parliament. Not that he's doing this for the first time. This is not the sixth year, you could say, way they do one now. But unlike the other 5 terms the way they do one, this trip he will be doing it to have empty house with just SLPP MPs and the paramount chiefs. And so probably
And one APC MP.
and one APC MP. Yes, thank you very much for also noting that. So it will be a different atmosphere altogether. And but let's talk to Melvin. I mean about that. Then we'll actually come to the content of the whole thing that we expect in his speech. Good morning, Melvin.
Good morning to you and to listeners.
So the president will be given doing a state opening of the parliament as usual, where for the first time in his tenure and in his first year, in his second tenure as well, he'll be doing it without the full house. You could say that.
And of course, that's the biggest talking point, of course. And it gets more symbolism wherein we expect a very jam-packed and invited parliament. Already, some people already begin to take their seats. And it could be very, very recognizable wherein the House will not sit down and proceeding start. And for once, like the previous 6 sittings, today's plenary sitting, which is the 7th, it will be symbolic because the empty system will be very highlighting. So yes, that will be a talking point. And what will it mean? Well, let's not forget in 2001, the main opposition will walk out. And in 2002, some of them they show placards. So that's a question I put to one of the government benches, Honorable Sawa, who is the deputy whip too, as to whether that will not take away from the event. And it seems for down players saying that this is not the first time and the business of the House will continue. So yes, that's just one side. But I think let's not ignore the fact that there's going to be a pomp and pageantry, as always. And definitely the other paper indicates that we have to expect Mr. Speaker for enter, we have to expect the Honorable Vice President for enter, we have to expect the President himself for enter, after which
and cabinet ministers.
Of course, not already assistants are looking from the lower gallery. Cabinet ministers are already seated. I see the mines minister already done taking seats and few others. And yes, I not see diplomats the 8th, but the upper gallery is almost done full up. The lower gallery still get some empty seats, but mostly for relatives of the MPs and of course permanent secretaries and the diplomats. I think it's important to take note that it will be keen to watch whether, whose diplomats and can from. I can vividly as state ambassador and a jam-packed diplomatic corps now, but whether that will be the case, it's too early to say. But of course, the proclamation, which is the big side of the story, and that will be done in tandem with Section 84.1. In summary, that section is saying that the president at any time, 28 days after election, can summon parliament and or declare the state of the nation address. Constitutionally and standing otherwise, there is no definition for the state of the nation address other than best practice. If you go to the United States, the state of the nation address, now the president can use to talk about economic strides, social strides, and several other political issues. So I don't think that's going to be an exception in the case of President Bio. As many issues than they for talk, but I'm sure issues around political reconciliation is big 5 game changer. And of course, national peace and unity, the issue of security, especially on the backdrop of alleged mutiny. These are all going to be watch lines for what the president will be saying. I think in summary...
all eyes will also be on him to address the current economic crunch where the country go through. Following the removal of subsidy, we don't exacerbate the situation as it is.
Of course, the economy will be part of most of the content of his speech, wherein we expect to get perhaps economic reforms by way of legislations we go propose to Parliament. But not forget, the president is already having his big 5 game changers. And I'm sure he will be elaborately speaking on those big 5, bringing out more details in terms of what approach, institutional approach or legislative approach or as the case may be. So, many expectations as to what he's going to be talking on, but definitely things around security, political cohesion, and perhaps he'll be ridiculing the absence of the APC like Anes Kuroma did sometime back, where he say in his statement that boycotts and walkouts don't make any sense these days. Whether the president gets us talk hard or soft, it will get a long way for go in simmering tension politically in the country.
Do you think he can use this speech for stretch an olive branch to the opposition for make them return to the house or for make them cooperate in terms of governance?
I tell you, for progressive and for the interest of national unity, if I was the speechwriter of the president, I would take perhaps like 4 or 5 points establishing the need for let the opposition come. But again, we for be very well limited in our expectations, looking at some of the speeches that we don't come on after the election and the conspicuous silence with regards to mediation efforts and negotiations. So if the president sounds harsh and hardline, I think it will exacerbate the situation. But if he stands, even if hypocritically or politically extending an olive branch, mind you, this is not the first time the president is extending an olive branch. Just after the election, he extended that. Although his critics have said that, well, that was not backed up with a lot of action because for the fact that the opposition never came to the house, it shows that negotiation failed and there is still a stalemate. So,
all right.
It's too hard to call, but I expect a speech that will be of a mixed shade of opinion, the good, the bad, and always the ugly.
Thank you very much for talking to us this morning.
It's always great